Good morning, watchers. Welcome to Brother Sal's Sunday gathering at the storehouse. Glad to have you here listening once again. I'm happy to be here. Tony's with me again today. How you doing, Tone?
Morning, Dad.
And, well, things are heating up in the Middle East. So what do you got to fill us in on today, Tone?
Well, yeah, they're heating up all right. It's, we've been seeing that for 20 or 30 years now coming. But I really think we can put our finger on something now, or I'm trying to get the evidence around the thing that I believe is really going on over there, and see if we're right, or if New York Times and Reuters and Business Insider and all these guys are right. Because I don't know how else to encourage people to share us and keep learning from our commentary, except to keep demonstrating that we have a more accurate view of what's going on. And I think we've been proved up for a long time now, from at least about 2000, when we were seeing the potential for the Hashemite king as the little horn character, not Obama or the King of England or the Pope. That's impossible. When we were projecting the three horns that would have to be uprooted would be the kingdoms that said they didn't want to go along with this peace deal with Israel, and that was Iraq and Libya and Syria. So, of course, we predicted that those would be the kingdoms that would be uprooted, from 15 years ago. So I guess we're 2/3 right, and so far. And then the Arab Spring, we were all over that, calling it a bunch of bull. 9/11, we were all over that, calling it a bunch of bull. So, it just turns out that our commentary, when I look at it, compared to all the crap that I read and see out in the world, we happen to be pretty accurate as far as I can tell. And I'm waiting for anyone to improve on our accuracy. I mean, show me where I'm wrong and you're right. I love these comments, these troll kind of comments that come in, just, oh, you're crazy. Oh, well, that's intelligent and insightful for people like us that have spent 30 years studying and then spend an hour and a half every week sort of giving you the evidence of our opinion. To just say you're crazy and, this kind of, doesn't that just make you out to be, show your lack of insight? I mean, if you want to make a mark, answer, say something, point out what I'm crazy about and point out where your evidence is, and, get the people to come and listen to you. But anyway, so yeah, I'm going to give you something today that very few people are offering as the answer to all this. We've been showing you through connecting the dots and pulling the strings and trying to get behind the reality that this stuff on the surface is BS. Where'd Russia get the money? Why is China rising against the people who funded them the last generation? All the paper they hold is American paper. Where is their real money coming from? Their people work for $1 an hour. Where do they have the economy to take over the world? Without what? Without who? You mean the Vatican and the central bankers that have been running things for 500 years? China's just going to take over? The same China that England went and conquered. The same China that got infiltrated by General Mao in the Cultural Revolution. The same China that got all the factories shipped over to it so that its people, instead of being a deep spiritual people with a real chip in the game in the world, became the enslaved factory workers of the world. You mean these guys are rising now against the world power? Show me your evidence. You're reading the stupid newspapers and watching CNN and reading the New York Times and the Washington Post, and I say, let's see who, let he who laughs last, okay? So, for today, Dad, what we got is this first thing, AP, I'm going to assume, is Associated Press, by Vladimir Sechenov, is the author of this piece called Russian Airstrikes in Syria Welcomed by Refugees. And I want to pick this one apart a little bit because it sets the tone, I think, the details for what I want to talk about. So I'm going to read a little bit of this, and I want to hit a few of these headlines today, but this one really, to me, has a lot of what I'm looking at, and this is just from yesterday, from Saturday, the 24th. From nearly a month of Russian airstrikes, it says, in Syria has boosted morale at a refugee camp in a suburb of this coastal city, Latakia, where residents displaced by the long civil war had words of praise Friday for President Vladimir Putin and Moscow's bombing campaign. Russia held talks in Vienna with the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, staunch foes of Syrian President Bashar Assad, but they remain deeply divided over his future. Secretary of State John Kerry said the country's representatives would meet again as early as October 30th to discuss how to end the civil war. Russian President Vladimir Putin raised Moscow's profile this week in the Syrian crisis, meeting with Assad at the Kremlin, putting its military muscle on display for journalists, and engaging in diplomatic efforts by discussing a political settlement to the conflict. Russia is Assad's prime backer, along with Iran. Kerry said that despite the Russian and Iranian support, the U.S. and allied nations, quote, understand that Assad creates an impossible dynamic for peace, a situation that, quote, has to be resolved. But Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow's backing for Assad remains strong despite what he described as rumors that the current talks were aimed at eventually easing him from power. Despite being unable to resolve their differences, Kerry said the Vienna meeting, quote, was constructive and productive and succeeded in surfacing some ideas, which I'm not going to share today, but which I hope have a possibility of changing the dynamic. Okay, so now these aren't very long. That was about half the entire article because, of course, these things are soundbite American style. Investigative journalism, ha ha ha. So what have we got here? The first thing that struck me when I read it, Dad, is that this area, Latakia, Syria, I've read now in a couple of articles. Funny, this is, you were reading another article if we get to it. This is a Shiite, the Alawite stronghold. This is where, more primarily Alawite country. Mm-hmm. So in years of civil war, this area hasn't been touched. These people are, you'll find out, are living in relative peace in the Alawite. So let me get this straight. The Alawites are the terrorizing people on their nation, because that's who Assad is. He's an Alawite. So this is where he comes from. This is where his people that support him obviously come from. This is where the Russian air base is. This is where Russia is right now. And this place, it says, has been nearly unaffected by this civil war. Funny enough. I mean, the same ISIS that's terrorizing the world, they get into Turkey and do damage. They get into Saudi Arabia and do damage, right? I mean, but boy, you can't hurt this Alawite community that Assad's from. I mean, we've been running bombing missions over there. You mean, who are we bombing? Anyway, like, this is the guy we're after, is it? This is the terrorist. You think that this area of the country, wouldn't that be everybody's first targets? Wouldn't those people know they were involved in a war? But funny enough, when you read these articles, this area where Assad gets his power from and comes from seems to be virtually unaffected by years of civil war. I mean, to me, that's sort of like, okay, so who they've been going after? I mean, you want Assad's regime out of the way, but you don't bomb any of this. You don't go terrorize his area of the country. You accuse him of terrorizing the entire country, that the whole country needs him out of there. The whole world needs him out of there. We got to help. But what we don't do is bomb any of the sites where he has bases where, geez, if Russia gets involved, that's where they're going to go. How come those Russian bases weren't targeted? I mean, we've been there for years, right? We've flown thousands of sorties, how come we didn't destroy some of the infrastructure we knew that Russia would need to use when they came into this? How come those places look like they're pristine, waiting for the actor to arrive onto the set? Okay, so I just want to throw that out there in my connecting the dots idea. Okay, so now Russia held talks in Vienna with the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, staunch foes. In other words, these are the three countries that are saying he has got to go, got to go, got to go. Just like, funny enough, in 2000, Libya, Iraq, and Syria said, nope, we can't go with this peace deal. No way, no way, no way. They had to go, right? So here we are with these three countries. Boy, the Syrian president's got to go, got to go, got to go. And yet, Russia had talks with them. It's kind of like when before with Iran. There is an article in here about Iran, because Khomeini is officially accepting the deal with some conditions. And one of them is we got no ties with you guys. No, I want to go through it again because I forget, but I thought that it was very fitting right now. He was saying we've got this deal, but it's also on the conditions that no, we're offering something. And he's saying, absolutely not. We don't trust you. We don't want, we don't trust you, basically. So yeah, all these, we're talking with the people who we demonize, who we know don't trust us, don't want anything to do with us, only want to make the deal they have to make to get the sanctions lifted so they can get on with life for their people. But after that, it's not like, hey, we've made a deal because we have something in common. It's like, screw you. You bent my arm. You bent me over the table. You said, I'm going to make you a deal you can't refuse. I'm going to starve your people, or you're going to bend this far. And Iran's telling his president, we're going to bend this far, but the president wants to pursue other areas of cooperation. And Khomeini saying, absolutely not. He's telling the president, no. We're going as far as we have to get these sanctions lifted, to get this nuclear program deal off the table. So that's done. But no, he's pulling the president back. Don't be talking to them about anything else. We don't trust them. You can read the article. Essentially says they've done nothing for us but disrupt and hurt us. So what do we want anything from them for? And then we see what they're after, was Khomeini's point in this. So I just want to draw why do we, what do we expect to get out of talks with Russia? Russia, I want to go through some of these articles. Russia's over there in their nice, clean base, flexing their muscles in Syria. And I find all this, really interesting that we didn't let Germany build back up an army and flex their muscles. We didn't let Japan build back up an army and flex their muscles. We didn't let the Iranian Revolution result in an Iran full of weapons that could threaten Israel or anyone. It's interesting how we just didn't let anyone do it, but Russia, our biggest enemy, who nearly brought the whole world to nuclear war in my childhood, suddenly has built up this weapons cadre. And again, I'm still looking for somebody to tell me, where did they get the money? Yes, they have natural resources, which were looted, we were told, 20 years ago by the oligarchs. Who'd the oligarchs get it from? You mean they got all the power to be able there looting the Russian country, looting the military, looting all their resources, and what, individuals? Who backs these individuals, I wonder? You don't think it's the big banks, huh? You don't think it's the money that descends through that Rothschild banking system, huh? I wonder, where did they get the money? And why did the UN, United Nations Alliance, America, allow its biggest enemy to rearm when it won't allow Iran to do so? And Iran's had more time, right? We busted Russia 10 years after the Iranian Revolution. We funded Iraq for years and sent them weapons. How long did Saddam Hussein last against us? So the picture I'm trying to paint is whoever's funding these militaries needs two of them, one opposite the other, or they can't have a genocidally big war. So I'm trying to get to that, as people know who listen. This is the real issue. They want World War III. We don't want, people don't want it, but somebody wants it, and somebody's funding it, like they funded World War II, like they funded World War I, and we know who funded both sides of World War I and II, but they probably don't matter anymore. I doubt that those same guys are involved. Probably, since it's all happening over there on the promised land about these Jews who say they're Jews that are not. I mean, and since that happened 100 years ago at the Balfour Declaration, and since World War I and World War II were brought about to kill the Jews and the Christians, and now we got the Muslims on the block, but probably none of that has to do with any of that. No, it's the rise of ISIS and radical Islam. That's what happened. Radical Islam happened because the righteous people went back to that land, right? The people that God threw out 2,000 years ago, who had nobody there except a few straggling ancestors who have been living with their Muslim brothers and sisters for 1,000 years in, for the most part, harmony and respect. There's been none of this modern crud until the English got their hands in there and the whole Balfour Declaration and the repatriating of that state. So Christians have been sold this idea that that's God bringing the Christians back to the land. I mean, bringing the Jews back to the land. So the Christians have to support that, of course. But how do you, wait a minute, God's bringing them back to the land? That's what God's doing. He's bringing back these, even if it's just converts, let's say, it doesn't matter who it is. If the Chinese converted to Judaism, would God be bringing the Chinese back there to terrorize their neighbors, to give that land to the Chinese because the Chinese converted to Judaism? See, it's because they've misrepresented the scriptures. What it really says is God will lead them back there one day. He will set up his kingdom there. He will do it. The people, the Jews, they were kicked off of that land and will never be back there again until he sets up that kingdom. So the question is that God setting up the kingdom from 1917? Is it just a coincidence that the setting up of that land and the two world wars and the coming third world war all fit like hand in glove with this idea of Israel taking over the land that they claim was given to the descendants of David? So this is the real issue. And unless you dig apart the history a little, if you're just going to go with the religious line, well, of course, that God said he's going to bring the people back. Well, show me that scripture. Let's talk about that scripture. What is that scripture? Where does God say he's going to bring those people back? Through terrorism, through arms, through war, through deceit. I mean, the Mossad's slogan is, through deception, thou wilt do war. I mean, does this sound like God? I mean, when he sent Nehemiah and Ezra back, is that how they went back to rebuild the temple? So I think we've been, conned. We've been hoodwinked. The scripture's been misrepresented to us so that we believe that's what's going on. And the people that have made us believe it, if you go back in history, these are the people that funded the Bolshevik Revolution. These Jews that sent Jews over there. Marx was a Jew. Trotsky was a Jew. Lenin was a Jew. These people were sent over there to slaughter the Christians. That's just the way it is. And start this communism. And if you believe in the whole Albert Pike, not prophecy, but just prediction that what they were going to do was create 3 world wars. And the third one was going to be to pit the atheists against the Christian world, right? So what do we got now? These Russian aggressors, communism. Nobody talks about the fact that that's the home of Orthodox Christianity and that the whole Bolshevik Revolution was funded by the Zionists to destroy Orthodox Christianity, funded by really the Western Christianity, the Vatican, to destroy Eastern Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, which after they had attempted to destroy them in Constantinople, it drove them north into Russia and over to Greece, where they've been trying to destroy them ever since. They spent 80 years in Russia destroying Orthodox Christianity, and that's a proven fact. I mean, those Ukrainian genocide, that Holocaust, those were all Christians. That was a Christian nation that got destroyed. Why don't we know about that in Christianity? Why isn't that part of this narrative about the Holy Land and all this kind of stuff? Because it's easy. It traces back too cleanly to the people that funded it all. Who funded the genocide of all those Christians over there? Son of a gun, these communists. Who funded the communists? Just like I'm saying about China. Who funded that General Mao and his Cultural Revolution, which is nothing but a mafia strong arm to go in and change that culture from a spiritual culture that would have never stood for this kind of enslavement of their people. So you had to change that. Who paid for that? That's not cheap. Anybody who thinks that was popular is out of their minds. That was paid for. Just like the Americans getting rid of all the unions and such. Nobody wanted to give up their unions, give up their rights, give up their, any claim on their lives and their effort. That had to be fought for. You had to defeat those people, and they've been defeated. That's why I say this whole idea of gun control. Are you kidding? These people that have given us the tax laws they've given us these laws that take all our rights away, that eavesdrop on us, that give us, that binds you to a slave system of money that doesn't even exist, that they just type into existence on a computer screen, and now all of us are enslaved. A child going to college where they're killing the economy, sending the jobs to China as if they don't know the way it all fits together, and now your kids come out of school, they got no good job to pay off that loan, but that loan is that's with them forever. There's no way to, there's no reconciling that, even though it was punched into a keyboard. It's a meaningless bit of creation of debt. And so, that scheme was shot down even in the United States of America. It was shot down everywhere. They had to fight to put it in. And this is what I'm trying to lay a little bit of. Don't think that all of these things are organically growing. Russia just happened to come up with a military at this time that's as big as the United States of America. They just happened to do that in the last 20 years, and nobody did anything to stop them. No sanctions, we were able to stop them at the height of the Cold War when it seemed like they were as strong as we were, right? The KGB and the spies, the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? These people had their fingers on the button, we were told. That's how close we were. So after we defeated that, after we looted them and broke them, then what? We just ran and stuck our head in the sand and didn't pay any attention as what? These oligarchs spent all their money on rearming Russia. Who spent the money on rearming Russia 20 years ago? Somebody please answer this question, or I'm going to just keep asking it, because it's the thing that points to how Armageddon happens. They rearm both sides. Now, how do they get us to fight? That's what today's about. That's different than what I see anybody else saying. They're talking about fighting over the oil and the pipelines. Are you out of your mind? We control Afghanistan. We control Pakistan. We control Saudi Arabia. We control Jordan. We control Egypt. Now we control Libya, Israel. How hard do you think it would be to get pipelines where we need to get? How long has England and American money been in that region? How many pipelines do other people have that we don't have? Right? So, these things are just, it's absurd to think that what we've been spending our money and military on with our 1,400 bases around the world is falling behind ISIS and Russia. That's what we've been doing, and China. Right? China, ISIS, and Russia, Brazil, they've risen to be the powers, while the bankers that won the Second World War and invested in all of this economic boom that made Americans the one that all bought houses and Chinese people the one that all worked for $1 an hour. That's what that resulted in. Mm-hmm. How is it now that those people that funded that move and have 1,400 bases around the world and weaponizing space and, genetic programs, and Monsanto, last time I looked, was out of our side of the world. But China's the one that's got all the power. And Russia's got all the military. Holy mackerel. When did that, the people that work, that's like saying the factory that I started, next thing you know, the people I'm paying, they own all the land. I thought I owned the land. I thought I was paying them to work for me. When did they own all the land? So I don't think they do. See, I think their strings are being pulled because the whole world has to get to what's already been planned, which is the genocide of the Muslims in that territory, what we call the Middle East, so that it can be, the new map can be drawn with Israel at the center. Okay, so darn it, I just don't want to spend the time to read it all. But there was something in this. There's a few things, but I don't know. It's all. I encourage people to just read this stuff with an eye to what I'm talking about, and you'll see through it, I suppose. Kerry talks to our supposed enemies like this is some diplomacy, right? The people that don't trust a word out of his mouth. Well, what's the waste of the ticket, Kerry? What do you have to? What is it that he's able to tell Americans, which I am not going to share today, but which I hope have a possibility of changing the dynamic? I mean, my children that are being asked to go to war, you're not going to tell me what in the world you people are talking about. The ideas that are surfacing that might save us all from this disaster that we're all facing, that mean our children going to war and dying horrible deaths. Yeah, but I'm not going to share it today, what some of these ideas are. Because what? You're making the decisions for America, Kerry? You and Obama and these bunch of neocons, you're sitting in a room deciding what America's going to do. So you don't have, Americans will just what? We'll find out once you've decided what you want to share. This is America. This is what a public servant is. I mean, this is what it's become, right? And of course, Kerry's, the only reason he says this is because he doesn't make any decisions. Neither does Obama. Neither do any of the congressmen. So, I mean, that's pretty obvious now. The congressmen don't even know what the bills say. Nancy Pelosi, we have to pass it. Then we can find out what's in it, right? Because they're just told, Nancy, here's the bill. We wrote it. We, the bankers, we, the pharmaceutical, we, the people you work for, we wrote it. You just go pass it. Well, what's in it? You'll find out when it's passed. That's all you need to know. So it's that kind of thing with our government. Congressmen don't make any decisions except the decisions they're told to make by the people pulling the strings. So again, who's pulling the strings? Geez, AIPAC's a pretty strong lobby in America. That's kind of funny, right? That little squirmy bugger that is all over the internet for saying, yeah, in Iran, a submarine could go down and maybe not come up. Who would know why? Yeah, let's create a false flag against Iran. Because AIPAC's position is, hey, we want war with Iran. Because they're such a threat. Now, this is what I want to get to today. The point that I think is, the reason I'm hoping you're coming here to hear something different. The threat with Iran. What is that threat? I mean, go back to 79 and the Iranian Revolution. Who do you get in there? Khomeini. Funny, where did Khomeini go in between when when the people were ready to tear the place apart and they had to get the Shah out of there? Was Khomeini in Iran hanging out with all those people cheering like Gaddafi was back in the 50s? No. You know where Khomeini was? He was on a UN, a NATO plane in France, right? Mm-hmm. So how big an enemy could Khomeini be that we were protecting him to rush him in as the one that the West could support as the leader, since they couldn't support the genocidal maniac that we gave him first? So there is, I'm not going to say Khomeini is working for the same people. I'm simply pointing out that I think there's a reason Khomeini's been there all these years. I think there's an agreement that keeps him stabilizing Iran within the confines of the freedom that they agreed upon. In other words, yeah, you can run your country in the way you want, Sharia, blah, 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 but don't you rise them against us. Don't you? I mean, the minute you do that, let me show you the Kennedy footage. Let me show you the Saddam Hussein hanging. Let me show you. So I think there's a reason Khomeini's been able to get old in there, and their nation has been, for the most part, no matter all the saber rattling and this and that, Iran stays virtually, they're the bad guy everybody loves to hate, but nobody ever has to. You don't have the same instability potential ever. Somehow, with all the bad that Iran is. When's the ISIS revolution? How come that's never happened in 40 years, 35 years? No ISIS revolution out of Iran, even though they're the Shiite ones that have had, they went to war with Iraq, or Iraq went to war with them on the border, however you want to, we went and pushed that button over there for 8 years to kill a bunch of Muslims, and probably for the excuse to get arms in there and build up bases in Iraq, to make sure that Khomeini always understood. I mean, this is the way I'm seeing it. So I think Khomeini was put in there, even though he certainly has a level of autonomous rule in his country. It's just too convenient now. So the Shia, so this is the lines I want to draw. The Shiites in Iran, the Alawites now in Syria, these being the sudden target, and in places like Yemen. These are the sudden target now of this ISIS. These extremists that are. So what's the history now? Taking out these regimes that we put in place that creates this vacuum for this extreme Sunniism, which lights the fire now between the Sunni Shia sects. Okay. Now, it's only been a few months since I've been studying old Sheikh Imran Hossein, the Islamic eschatologist, who is, right there at we're subscribed to. Please listen to his stuff. He's been saying for years that since the Arab Spring, he's the only other one I can find that points to the Arab Spring and says that was done on purpose to destabilize. That's a NATO move. That's a bring on. See, and what he says it's been bringing on for years, he's been claiming this, Sunni Shia civil war. Mm-hmm. So this is the strings I want to draw that you're not hearing anywhere, but that I'm not hearing anywhere but Sheikh Hossein. But if you're any kind of Christian watching, you're not hearing it from any Christians. Because of course we're part of the genocidal attack on Islam. We're Christians are the ones being set up to do the genocide because, of course, Christians are the military. It's all these poor kids in the military doing it for Jesus, going and killing Muslims because they're the devil's religion. So how does that all even happen? See, how does that all even happen? But that is where we are. And the point I want to draw now out of these headlines for people and these articles is the way this is what they're moving to. This is why I'm telling you, we're not going to have any war with Russia right now. I promise you. All this is smokescreen to get Russia into place so that when the civil war goes off, it can have as many guns behind it on each side as possible. They can absolutely slaughter each other, and the world will have to get involved because it will spread all over the world. It will happen in Europe. It will happen in, everywhere in Africa. And so this is what this is the basis of what I'm trying to say. And now read the articles with this in mind. So this first one about how happy the refugees are now, Russian airstrikes, because of course Russia's beaten back this ISIS force that's coming after these, mostly Shias, these Alawites and Shias. And that's what I find funny. Okay, they're coming after them, but the whole area of the country that's the most strategic that Russia would have to use to defend them, nobody's gone after that for years. I find that a little bit crazy that not even covertly, Israel, America, nobody said, you know, once this gets going, Russia's going to come in over there on the Alawite side where they've got a base. But what if we blow some stuff up over there that's going to make it a lot harder for them to add the sort of support that they would want, you know, that Assad would need from them. So I find all this, you know, all too coincidental for me, for, as I say, a country who's been able to infiltrate every part of the world with our scheme. South and Central America, it's all quite on record how we destroyed those countries, put in puppet regimes, stole the resources from the, you know, from the fruit growing regions to the drug trafficking regions, to the natural resources, the, you know, the minerals and all, you know, that's all we've done all over the world. So this is such a clear pattern that to pretend that somehow we're just, boy, we just fell prey to old ISIS, didn't we? And we're the ones that took out the regimes that allowed ISIS to come to be. So it's not believable. It's just not believable, just like 9/11. It's not believable. I just saw another thing, funny enough, I wasn't even looking for it, but it came across my radar this week, where someone was talking about the fact that the buildings, the Twin Towers, were designed to withstand multiple impacts by jet airliners 707s, which are considerably bigger than the airliners that hit them, that passed right into them like the buildings were made of jello. So yeah, that doesn't happen in our universe, guys. It doesn't. So it didn't. Just like, you know, when you watch the cartoon and the Roadrunner runs through the stone mountain and it leaves a cutout of the Roadrunner and he comes out the other side, right? That doesn't happen. If your child wants to jump off the mountain because he's going to just go right through the ground and leave his little imprint, you say, geez, that doesn't really happen in real life, son, daughter. You'll go splat when you hit the ground. Well, guess what? If an airplane would have hit the Twin Towers, it would have gone splat and blown up. It would not have penetrated. And in no possible world that we know of would it have just penetrated unhindered right into the building, like the building was made of, I mean, not even water. Water it would have smashed up on the outside, you know. I mean, literally, like the building was made of air, like the building was a house of cards. So that's what the story of 9/11 is. And so if you're not sort of fitting all of these crucial historical facts into some context that accounts for these, you know, these things in a rational way, well, you're just following the, you know, you're just being driven and tossed about like the sea, wherever they blow you. So, and that's what I say you're getting, is blown around. So yeah, Russian airstrikes in Syria welcomed by refugees. Thank God for Russia. Next headline by Reuters, Jonathan Ahlander and Maha Zuvela. October 22nd, Sweden struggles to cope with migrant tide. Orban warns of threat. Our guy from Hungary there, who's the one guy nobody wants to stay in his country, but he's the most scared that Europe's being overrun and is going to ruin their democratic principles. So I don't know. Let's just see. Sweden said on Thursday it expected up to 190,000 migrants this year, putting unprecedented strain on a country famous for welcoming refugees, but planning to house many in tents this winter. At the opposite pole of the angry debate on the migration crisis, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban urged European leaders to change their immigration policies and consult voters or face a threat to the democratic order. So put this into my perspective, right? Dividing the people. What have I been saying now since this started? They knew it was coming, so they could have approached it many different ways. They could have approached it from, hey, this is the Christian thing to do. Hey, we've got the resources. Hey, let's all put our heads together. Let's figure this out because we've got a world crisis over here. We got to get rid of the Syrian president, and then everybody can go back home. Nobody mentions that, but you'll find that a few people like Sheikh Hussein mentioned that these Syrians want to go back home. They don't want to leave their family. They don't want to leave their land and leave their people that they love or know or familiar surroundings, their history. They want to go back home. So nobody points that out, that many of these people that are fleeing the civil war want to go back home. So no, instead, division. Sweden wants to be the nice guy. Hungary is the bad guy. Thousands of refugees continue to pour into Slovenia in the hope of reaching prosperous Northern Europe, and the tiny country appealed for other European Union states to send police to help manage the flow. Notice they say thousands, not tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands. I mean, I'm still looking for this this army. I mean, you know, an army even back in the days of Alexander the Great had to be 100,000, right? You didn't go to conquer the world without at least 100,000. Like I was saying last week, Iran sent how many people to support Russia? 1,500? I mean, is that support? You better hope that America doesn't send the combined marching bands of Southern California. There's probably 10,000 of those guys. They'll beat them to death with trombones. I mean, it's absurd. 1,500 people were sent. This is what we're worried about. You know, like I said, if Iran had 150,000 people pouring into Syria, boy, now you got an army, don't you? So thousands of refugees continued to pour into Slovenia. Europe is struggling to cope with its biggest wave of migrants since World War II. Of course, there's been no other big waves of migrants, so what's that saying? When's the last time you had genocide going on in a country where all these people had to leave? When's the last time American or imperial interest went and disrupted an entire region of the world close to Europe? World War II was the last time. According to the International Organization for Migration, more than 670,000 people have arrived by sea this year, fleeing war zones and poverty in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. 670,000 this year. So if all of them moved into Italy, would that change Italy's democracy? Would they suddenly become an Islamically controlled country? Anyway, Sweden's migration agency said more than 30,000 of the 140 to 190 people it expected in 2015 would be unaccompanied children. Such numbers are much higher as a proportion of Sweden's population of under 10 million than even 800,000 plus expected by Germany. So again, painting this picture of the stress it's putting on, and there's no doubt it does put on stress, but watch this. Watch what the Italian that's in charge of the money of the world says. The agency estimated it would face a shortage of accommodation for 25,000 to 45,000 migrants by the end of the year. Tens of thousands could spend the cold Swedish winter in heated tents. Tens of thousands. Well, hey, that's a lot of people. And Sweden's one of the countries they want to go. So I don't know. Is this changing the world of Europe? They got 25 to 45,000 people. They don't know how they're gonna find room for them. I mean, over in Jordan, don't they have hundreds of thousands of people living in tents?
Biggest city in all of Jordan is that tent city.
Okay, so and is Jordan richer than Sweden?
No.
So I don't know. And I see that. But now let me put the hook to this, because what's funny is after all this, well, first let's give, I always want to give old stupid Orban a plug here, because he really upsets me when he talks this kind of stuff. Hungary has fortified its borders against the tide of migrants and spoken of a threat to Europe's Christian and democratic way of life. Orban told the state television channel that European leaders had no mandate to let hundreds of thousands in. Well, now, first of all, hundreds of thousands aren't quite the hundreds of millions it would take to, change the face of Europe, or even the tens of millions. But, it might threaten Europe. Well, I disagree with this, but if you want to make the case that it could threaten Europe's democratic way of life, then show me some demographics. Show me how 100,000 moved into a city of 150,000 and now it's all Islam and they want to change the banks and this is what they're doing and oh my God, what if this spreads? Show me that story. But Christian, threaten Europe's Christian way of, you mean it's Christian to turn away hungry people because they're Muslim? The only other people in the world that believe in Jesus as the Messiah who's going to come again and rule the world. The only other people in the world as a people who believe that Jesus is the Messiah of the Jews, that he will come again, and he will eventually rule the world. That is what the Muslims believe. And so Viktor Orban says that it's in Hungary's interest, it's to protect its Christian way of life, to deny these people even, I guess, basic care as temporary refugees. I mean, as I say, there's an argument to be made, hey, do we just let these people come in and become citizens now, take over areas of the country where they might, where because they all came at one time in one unit, they're thick enough to, to affect the political or demographic of that area? Well, that's a fair thing to talk about, not probably hard to overcome. Really, I don't know any countries that let people just in and suddenly vote. Usually you got to become a citizen to do that and all that kind of stuff. So I don't even see the threat the way they're presenting it, and to pretend there's anything Christian about it is why I spend a little extra time denouncing Viktor Orban and his position and the position of these Europeans, like they got the Czech Republic all on that side now too. So I see that it's what I'm going to present is they're dividing Europe so that when the time comes and the false flags start happening and the extreme Islamist movement gets blamed, Europe will be completely divided and killing each other over the issue. So that's where I want to go with that. But here's what I wanted to point out. Now this, going back now, Prague's, let's see, Zeman, is this Prague? I lost who this moron Zeman is. Yeah, okay. Czech President Milos Zeman has warned Muslim immigrants will impose Sharia law. Quote, we will lose women's beauty because they will be covered head to toe in burqas. This is the president of a country. Now, I would just simply ask him, Mr. Zeman, does that mean that a Muslim immigrant can suddenly vote in your country? Do they now have the same rights as the people in your country? They can vote Sharia law into place in your country? How many is that going to take? You mean you can't just simply put some sort of measures in place to protect against that outrageous eventuality? So because that's almost like in California, because some moron might hurt himself at the beach, nobody can do anything at the public beach. No fire, no bottles, no camping, no fun, no nothing. You can't do it. No driving on the beach, no camping on the, all these no. Why? Well, because someone might get hurt, right? Some idiot might do it, so nobody can do it. So what we're saying here in this refugee crisis, because of the outrageous idea that these people escaping civil war are going to take over your country and change it and make all your women wear burqas. I mean, this is what you're presenting as the reason to keep them out completely. That's the only other answer. So, Zeman, yeah, this is that. Zeman has warned, the president has long warned of the threat of Islamic fundamentalism. He stands by his opinion, and he will not change it under pressure from abroad. So he's a hardliner like Orban. And I say the bankers paying him, loaning him the money to be in charge as an idiot, are telling him this is the angle you take, or we'll hire a new president. You want to go against us? We pay your bills, buddy. That's why a guy like Orban can do it, even though, the people in his country are sort of up in arms about it. So this is the part I wanted to get to. A study said the 5 million foreigners living in Italy paid for the pensions of 620,000 people. European Central Bank President Mario Draghi said separately, the influx of migrants was, quote, a very significant increase in labor supply for Europe, but it was too early to tell what the effect would be. So how come nobody's talking about that side of the coin as at least a balance to the fact that, yeah, probably what they're going to do is institute Sharia law immediately and put burqas on all the women. They're probably not going to come there and work for $5 an hour and be cheaper labor than what you got now. I mean, they're probably not going to go to the cities where all the people with money are and look for those cheap jobs where they work in your restaurants and they sweep your floors and they clean up after your bratty kids. That's probably not what they're going to do. No, they're probably going to take over your country and make all your women wear burqas. I mean, I just want people to see how outrageous are these articles that were given as journalism. This is journalism, or this is Reuters. Okay, so now ISIS and that new one here, Business, I love these guys. Business Insiders is like my new favorite Fox News offshoot. I can almost guarantee these guys are a Fox News offshoot because of the way they talk and the beautiful maps. I mean, these guys got incredible. I mean, if the CIA knew what Business Insider knows about where all these ISIS people are, I bet we'd be a lot farther ahead in the game. But the headline is ISIS attacks are dramatically increasing over a year into the U.S.-led campaign against the group. I mean, as an American who grew up, in the greatest country in the world, who fights for freedom around the world, who liberates the downtrodden, and whose military cannot be matched, whose intelligence is, known the world over. We can look at something from space. We can catch you. We catch the criminal. We bring the bad guy to justice. We go blow up your country if you attack us. But boy, after a year, and if you look back a year ago, wasn't that when ISIS was a flag? It was just a flag with a guy on a quiet street. And a year later, attacks are dramatically increasing over a year into the U.S.-led campaign against the group. So even though the U.S., with all its intelligence and its space weapons and its contacts and its resources and its military bases and its superior weaponry, nope. Year later, their attacks are what's increasing. Shoot, we didn't even know Russia was going to come and complicate the situation. Boy, we really do play catch up. So, so anyway, this just goes to point out all the great attacks. But what I love is the maps are fantastic. Man, they know where all these guys are. The first map on here shows the broad, the activity from September of 2015. It's got it on a world map, a regional map of that part of the world, North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. And it shows all the way from Morocco, all the way to, I guess that's Kuwait over there. No, that's, where are we? Way over here. Is that Pakistan? Where am I? This is the other side of India here, yeah. So their activity has spanned the globe. India, Bangladesh, okay, on the other side of India. Their activity is from Morocco to India. I mean, their empire is already bigger than Alexander the Great when you look at where their activity is. And I mean, man, oh man, you'd think we got the resources to at least stomp out some of this in some of these places, but no, they're the ones on the grow. And I'm just trying to point out, I'm staying with the idea that we're the ones that have had the accurate commentary. And I've been saying since they were a flag, and since we weren't doing anything about them, and since we were talking about them like they were something, that watch out, they're going to have to spread and spread and spread and spread until they are a threat to Israel. A real threat, like the whole world says, oh my God, what are we going to do? And so anyway, Business Insider exists to continue to give us the graphics on that. So now we see that just in September alone, I mean, they got activity, from Morocco all the way through North Africa, all through the Middle East, all the way Pakistan and Afghanistan, and all the way over to India. And then the other graphic, which is fantastic, the fight against Islamic State. You've got the attack zone where IS participated or perpetuated attacks, the control zone where IS has defensible control, and the support zone where IS moves freely and attacks are often staged. And these aren't general. I mean, these are pretty specific. They got the whole country of Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, southern Turkey. I mean, they got every zone. They know right where all these people are and what they control. How would you know that with these people who we can't even slow them down? So anyway, and there's nothing to it. This is another 500-word article just to show you how powerful and how broad sweeping ISIS really is. And of course, the picture on the cover of the article is some guy that looks like he comes from, America or Tennessee. He just looks like a white guy standing, military. He's an obvious mercenary. Does not look to me like any sort of course, Muslims wouldn't be standing there in this kind of gear, a real Muslim. So he's a mercenary. We know they're getting paid $1,000 a day. And he's standing in front of one of these Toyota trucks that have been proven to be something we sent to al-Nusra to hand over to ISIS. And then we went, oh, wait, hey, we sent those to al-Nusra. Yeah, 100 of them or something. When you see the pictures of ISIS with their banner, I bet we print the banners for them in China at one of our printers. Because it's cheaper. Nah, we'll take care of the banners. Nah, you guys, you just get out there and kill somebody. So ISIS attacks are dramatically increasing as they drive around the Toyota trucks that we sent them. It's just absurd. I touched on this next one, another Reuters article from the 21st. Iran's Khomeini conditionally approves nuclear deal with powers. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on Wednesday approved the Iranian government's nuclear deal with world powers, but said Tehran should not give up core elements of its atomic program until allegations of past military dimensions had been settled. It's pretty much a blah, blah, blah BS article as far as nothing comes out of it except to point out that that they need the sanctions lifted. The part I wanted to get to was where, since the deal was struck, Khomeini, who holds together Iran's multi-tiered, faction-ridden power structure, he holds it together. We don't allow people to challenge our superiority, only to a particular height. And I don't think there's anybody. See, Assad was never challenging anything all my life. Either was Khomeini. What's come out of Iran? We accused them of building nuclear weapons. We accused Assad of using chemical warfare. We accused Libya of blowing up his... I'm assuming that's all, since we always do the same thing, and it's been proven that Assad didn't do that, and you can see what the deal with Gaddafi was, I'm assuming the Iran thing is BS as well. There's an article I want to get to here today about what they talk about Iran's plans back when in the 70s to blow up. Was it the 70s? I'll have to look at it. Maybe it was the early 2000s. To blow up Iran's nuclear facility. That they've had these plans, and this is a big political strain, And I see in it all the pulling of strings. It's just not true. Israel's always had the nuclear weapons. Iran's never had anything. That's why Iran gets sanctions against them. Israel doesn't get sanctions against them. Iran gets sanctions. Iran's the one that has to ask the world to be able to have some uranium so they can make some power like everybody else. Israel doesn't have to do that. So at what point did they become this threat? They've simply maintained the line that state of Israel is not what it claims to be, so we're not going to claim it. We're following Allah. And we know Allah didn't, that's not Israel. So that's all we're saying. See, we've turned that into, the rhetoric becomes, evil Iran wants to kill Israel. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying, Khomeini 1, Khomeini 2, we wouldn't have allowed Khomeini II to take over if he wasn't acceptable. And so anyway, the point of this that I think is important, since the deal was struck, Khomeini, who holds together Iran's multi-tiered, faction-ridden power structure, has ruled out normalizing relations with the United States, overriding Rouhani's expressed wish to pursue further areas of cooperation. Rouhani's the president. See, so Khomeini's saying no normalizing relations. Now, why? Why is he saying that? Because if you're looking at it from my perspective, that enemy has to be maintained, right? Iran has to be ready to pull that trigger. The Shia Muslims are going to flood 150,000 strong, is what I say. Then you know you got your war. Then. But see, that will all happen because of this Sunni-Shia civil war. They will have to do that to protect themselves. See, so how do we get to there is the point. And it's by stoking both the fires at once. So while you've got this ISIS thing bringing in all the weapons to stoke the Sunni fire and get, start essentially funding mercenary jihadists to go do the killing on their brothers that otherwise maybe any reasonable Sunni wouldn't do. On the other side now, what do you got? Russia giving the guns to the Shiites to protect them. See, this is what this is where I see why Russia. Why is it Russia in America? Because who's going to provide the guns to the Shias? So that you can have this civil war. Oh, Russia's over there at a nice clean base. If we can get, I don't know how much time I've used today, Dad, if we have any more time. Okay, just a little more, because I think this stuff's, I want to try and let the headlines throw those strings down and see if you can connect them the way I do. This one, Moscow fury as Swiss jet comes dangerously close to official plane. Now, I love this kind of entry. This is where this is your made for TV movie stuff here. Russia on Monday lashed out after a Swiss warplane flew dangerously close to one of its passenger jets carrying a senior parliamentary delegation, although Switzerland defended it as a routine check. You're going to find out in here that this senior delegation includes Narishkin. For the Russian speaker, Narishkin told AFP that the warplane flew so close that delegation members could take a picture. I can confirm that this incident involving a French military plane happened this morning, she said. We saw it very close. Narishkin, who is on both the EU and US blacklists for publicly supporting the deployment of Russian forces to Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea, told Russian agencies he was aware of what happened, although he did not see the warplanes himself. So I just find that interesting because Ukraine is one of these flashpoints, right? This is one of these places where they're going to be able to portray to the world that Russian aggression has to be faced. And Russia has a reason to be aggressive there because they need that military, that naval base in Crimea, and they have the high ground morally, politically, because Crimea voted to go with Russia, and Russia annexed them. And we in the West are painting it as Russian aggression, but the world sees that it was quite clearly American aggression now that doesn't want to. We thought we were going to be able to do it through our money, I suppose, or on the surface. I say everybody, these strings are being pulled, and Ukraine is one of those straws that breaks the camel's back, that gets you to war with Russia when the time comes. Okay? So anyway, I find this just one of those interesting cryptic things where, a fighter jet comes out and comes close enough to make sure they see it. And the guy that's on there is a guy that's all for Russia supporting the forces in Ukraine to protect them from this NATO move that they've done to where they went in, essentially had another coup, got rid of the rightfully elected president of Ukraine, put in this Poroshenko puppet. And so anyway, that's all on the surface for these guys. The people pulling the strings just send the money. The people in the fight don't know necessarily that their strings are being pulled. They just know, hey, here's the money, build up weapons. One day we're going to have to fight these guys. And so they're all doing it for real. But the money's coming from the same place. Okay, another Reuters article. Iraq's ruling alliance militias urge Prime Minister to seek Russian strike. So now this is also brings in the Shia thing to me. Brings it right to the forefront now, because you got, I mean, Iraq, isn't that the country we took over? I mean, isn't that where we've been occupying for 12, 13 years? I mean, we're the ones that I mean, since the 80s, we've been in charge of Iraq. Those are our military bases. You think we're just going to let any president do what they want with Iraq? I mean, really? Free elections, and yeah, if you decide to blow up all our bases, change the money system, buy your oil in euros, we won't do, we attacked Saddam Hussein for that, but that was just for humanitarian issues, right? Come on. So this is what's so interesting. Iraq's ruling alliance and powerful Shiite militias have urged Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi to request Russian airstrikes on Islamic State militants who control large parts of the country. So isn't that interesting now where you're bringing in this, what to me is the evidence of this civil war coming into Iraq itself, because, Iraq's been under Sunni rule for a long time now. And it's, of course, divided. This is the thing that they've been talking about for 20 years or more, dividing Iraq into a Shia state and a Sunni state and a Kurdish state. So you have when they say Iraq's ruling alliance and powerful Shiite militias, hey, don't kid yourself. That's a strong group of people. And the other group of people that Saddam Hussein was ruling, that was the army, the National Guard, and all, that's a pretty strong group of people. This is two strong groups of people now getting ready to be armed, right? These guys are asking for Russian airstrikes. How far away is it to asking for Russian support? Iranian support. So anyway, I'm trying to draw out today what I've learned from Sheikh Hussein, or following his lead, that what NATO is really trying to do in this region is they're creating Sunni Shia civil war, and that's what NATO will be able to react to when the time comes. And I think we're not building up to World War III right now with Russia immediately. We're building up to Sunni Shia civil war. Russia's going to supply the guns to the Shias. Mm-hmm. Iran's going to supply ground support and whatever, to the Shias. And on this side, you have this false Sunni caliphate funded by the CIA and Saudi Arabia, funded by the West, by the NATO. Okay, so this one is really something, boy. I think this is important. This one's called, let's see, let me give you the title and all. This is another Business Insider, so this is Fox News. Here's what an Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear facilities might have looked like. And so they take you back. I can't recall the year, so I'm telling you the names of these articles. Go read them for yourself. But that this dry run, that these guys, that essentially what they're saying is Israel has been plotting to destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities, and that this is creating a lot of tension, even with America trying to figure out how to diplomatically keep this explosion. So what I see is they're planting the seed of how easy it is for Iran and Israel to come to war. They're already Israel's already ready. They've got plans. They're being restrained like a horse at the gate. They want to go in there and destroy Iran. And see, I say that's all propaganda, because we know for all these years, Iran doesn't have any weapons and they don't have any capability compared to all the guns that surround them. They're surrounded by the largest military base America has outside in the world. It's in Iraq. They're surrounded by Jordan and the guns we send there, Saudi Arabia and the guns we send there, Israel and the nuclear weapons that they have. Who's Iran going to call? Right? Russia and Iran aren't allies, not like that. Their only allies is through Syria. But Russia's Christian and Iran is Muslim. And well, Russia's still, I suppose, communist, or, I'm not sure what they proclaim themselves anymore. Hussein calls them a Orthodox Christian nation. He says that no matter how hard they tried to kill all those people, communism failed, and the people that have reemerged into government and authority there or come from Orthodox Christian backgrounds. So Sheikh Hussein sees Russia as Orthodox Christian. I'm not sure that that's still how they're perceived through the historical narrative right now. But from the standpoint of Iran and Russia, they don't see each other as brothers. Traditionally, Russia is this atheist communist nation, and Iran is Shia, Sharia law. So there, where do the weapons come from now? See, Syria becomes this middle ground. Syria is the country they can both fund with weapons and people. So the weapons come through Syria. So anyway, this is what I wanted to read out of this Business Insider article, which of course has another lovely graphic showing all the Iran's nuclear facilities and which ones do what. And so not sure how Business Insider gets all that information and why they know it's right. But, all this top secret. Kerry's not even allowed to tell us what ideas are on the table. But Business Insider knows all of Iran's intimate details. They know right where ISIS is, what they can protect, what they're doing. I don't know where they're getting all this intel. So out of this article of Reuters, the consequences of a direct hit on Iran's facilities, something which might require the most sophisticated military operation in Israel's history, are unknowable ahead of time. Right? The consequences are unknowable. We don't know what the heck's going to happen. He's just pointed out how close these guys are. They're chomping at the bit. They've been ready to do it. They've tried to do it. They begged to do it. And America's holding them back. You can't do it. Right? So the consequences of a direct hit on Iran's facilities are unknowable ahead of time. Perhaps an attack would touch off a devastating escalation cycle in which Iranian-linked terrorists attacked Israel and U.S. assets abroad. Iran launched attacks on Saudi targets to retaliate for their perceived cooperation, and the Iranian proxy militia Hezbollah unleashed its arsenal of 200,000 rockets at Israel. That's what Reuters is telling me, the unknowable but potential consequences of this direct attack, which Israel is chomping at the bit to make. Does that give you an idea, people, of what they are telling you is coming? Right? I just want to read that one more time. Perhaps an attack, would touch off a devastating escalation cycle, which is why Israel's so anxious to do it. I mean, why doesn't anybody point out? So that's why nobody's going to let them do this. Perhaps an attack would touch off a devastating escalation cycle in which Iranian-linked terrorists. Who are Iranian? Iran's a Sharia law country. Muslims aren't allowed to be terrorists. Hey, wait a minute. How come nobody's made this connection? Are there Christian terrorists? Could you say that we have Christian terrorists somewhere in the world terrorizing people for Jesus? Wouldn't that be against the teaching of you can't be a Christian and a terrorist. You can't be a Muslim and a terrorist. That's been invented for us. That's not historical. So the devastating escalation cycle in which something that can't exist, Iranian-linked terrorists, attacked Israel and U.S. assets abroad. Well, I guess, they could be Iranian-linked. They just can't be Islamic terrorists. They can't be Muslims. They could be Iranians. I don't know how many Iranians are non-Muslims that are in the terrorist business, but, this is how absurd our journalism is. It's just what they're saying is a misnomer. What they're saying is the devastating cycle in which a false flag on Israel is created and U.S. assets abroad that would force Iran to launch attacks, and Hezbollah unleash all it has, since that's all it's got, 200,000 rockets, which, I mean, they're probably counting every bottle rocket Hezbollah has. You know, they don't tell you. You know, of course, Israel at this time would be launching 700 million, you know, as far as the in kind, right? Whatever Hezbollah has to launch. I wonder what Israel and the United States have to launch, but they don't talk about that. So anyway, that's one last.
They make it sound like it's all coming one way.
Yeah, well, of course, we're just catching up to all this. We're just trying to figure all this out. We're the good guys, just being attacked. And so, yeah, I thought this was interesting too. This last article I found from AP by this same guy we started out with. Funny enough, this Vladimir Isechenkov. And this is also from Saturday. And the title of this is New Russian Military Might on Full Display in Syria. Sleek combat jets loaded with precision bunker buster bombs roar into the skies as soldiers in desert-style uniforms march past rows of neat housing at this Russian military base at one of Syria's largest airports. The air campaign on Syria, Russia's first military action outside the former Soviet Union since the war in Afghanistan. Well, there you go. 30 years. And now they're ready to take on the U.S. Holy shit. 30 years ago, they got beat in Afghanistan, dismantled, broke, the country looted, and here we are 30 years later. How'd this happen? Now here they are in Syria. So anyway, in their first campaign since the war in Afghanistan, shows a revamped Russian military, which sharply differs in both capability and mindset from the old Soviet-style force. Well, that just screams investment, doesn't it? It is capable of quickly projecting power far from Russian borders, widely uses drones and precision weapons, and cares about soldiers' comfort. I mean, these are the good guys of the future. The thunder of Syria's civil war couldn't be heard at Hmeimim, this is this airport, located in the coastal province of Latakia, which has largely been spared the chaos and destruction of more than 4.5 years of fighting in Syria. The thunder of Syria's civil war couldn't be heard over here where all the Shias live. Well, who's civil warring? Who are the Sunnis warring against? Why wouldn't they be fighting over here where these guys, where they have the most, damage they can do in a place where Russia's potentially can come in and, it's just 4.5 years and you can't even hear the civil war from over here. It sounds to me like this area has been set aside. Nice, neat homes now. They're going to describe in here a part of President Vladimir Putin's sweeping military modernization program. The Air Force received hundreds of new modernized aircraft, all equipped with state-of-the-art electronics on par with U.S. and NATO jets. Son of a gun, Vladimir Putin. How long has he been around? Where did he get that money? A few years ago, I was told that Russia's economy survived on a $90 a barrel oil price, and oil was at like $40. And I was told Russia was going broke. Wasn't that what we were told about 10 years, 8 years? All these. Where'd Putin get the money for a sweeping military modernization program? Who loaned him the money to buy all these new aircraft, seeing as we're coming to disrupt the Middle East? Right? Come on.
And what did he use as collateral?
Well, this is my point. Who funded this for what reasons? He didn't need collateral. The collateral are all the boys and girls he's going to go send to die. That's the collateral. They just need the army. The people funding it need the army. They don't need the money. They need the army. See? And now they got one right under everybody's nose. And Vladimir Putin sweeping. Where did Putin get? I just heard Russia was so broke a few years ago because of the oil. The oil prices were down, and that was killing Venezuela, killing Russia. But apparently he's just been able to, hundreds of new modernized aircraft, all equipped with state-of-the-art electronics. He's got Buster bomb, he's got all the same bombs. He's got everything. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So anyway.
He's shopping at the same store that we do.
Well, no, see, that's the thing. They're not shopping. They're puppets. Their string is pulled. They're told, look, this year you need this many more aircraft. You're going to put them here and here and here. And he says, yes, boss. I mean, that's obviously the way it is because it's always been that way. Read Smedley Butler. Has anything changed in 100 years? Have those guys lost their hold? Did they go to war for other reasons now? You mean really? You mean all that stuff they warned us about, Kennedy, the military-industrial complex and the power of the people from the inside that Kennedy talked about? These people don't have power. Well, yeah, but Kennedy then 20 years later or 10 years later said, we don't fear people we don't have a fear from any outside force, but a force from the inside that threatens to take over the secret societies that, that have some agenda. See? So has that been, you mean that's not really in play anymore? Now we have just these honest congressmen and women. We have these honest government that's doing the best they can. Darn it, they're just, they're trying to defeat ISIS. Darn it, they just didn't, I don't know. How were we supposed to stop Russia from building up a military as big as ours with no money in the last 20 years? Or, I don't know, since Putin, last few years, apparently. All of these stories are, if you had any basis, any context, you couldn't possibly. It's like 9/11. You can't. If you have any idea of physics, once you've been shown, it's like suppose I told you that the raindrops were falling upward, right? I was standing there and rain wasn't coming down, rain was coming up, right through the ground. It was getting the bottom of my feet wet first and going up into the sky. That's, that it was raining outside, but the rain was going up through the ground, up into the sky. Would you believe that? If I showed you a picture of it on TV, would you believe that it was really raining up, or would you think I did a trick with the TV? But yet I show you planes flying into a building like the Roadrunner going through the cliff, and you tell me I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist for simply pointing out that rain falls down, not up. So, you make the decision from there. Anyway, that's my contribution, Dad. Thanks for listening.
No, thanks, Tony. It's always a lot of fun listening to you. I know that you're very enthusiastic about the material that they hand you every week. You're not like Jon Stewart making fun of it. You get angry at it because it is so angry causing to know that they treat us like we could never understand anything, like we're dumb, mesmerized puppets being lit, or our strings being pulled. And
well, from your mouth to their ears, because that is what that's part of the proof that we are that.
That's I know.
The fact that they could show you buildings like they show you a cartoon,
yeah, and
then tell you. And then let the whole world tell you, well, wait a minute, that can't happen that way. The architects and engineers point out that
can't do that.
Even if the planes could fly into buildings, which they can't, but even if something like that were to happen, the building couldn't collapse on itself for that reason. So none of what we saw that day happened that way. And yet people still want to resist that rather than dive into the reality of it and say, whoa, okay, let me swim in reality here. Let me unplug like the Matrix. So it's really proof that we are that plugged in, which means we're not stupid because human beings are all the same. We're all the same capacity. It means their control mechanisms are that secure. Mm-hmm. That's what that means, which I think points to our end time theory being more and more correct, or it's just more evidence that this would appear to be the time of the end when the control over the mass population is of a kind where they can create, like the Bible says, call fire down from heaven in the sight of men. Right? You couldn't do that before unless you were really could do it, work a miracle. But now you can do it like you can put a plane into a building. Right?
Well, anyway, it's all coming to a head faster than anybody can really imagine, and yet it takes years and years and years, because we've been watching this now since 1980, and we're just getting around to the really heavy stuff right now, and that's a long time ago. That's 35 years ago. But it's been an interesting career watching this all happen, and I hope you folks that are listening appreciate it, that somebody actually took the time to watch it happen and then broadcast it to you. And we're still here after all this time, and thanks to you folks who contribute to wanting to hear this material. That's why we're still here, and we thank you for it. And till we see you again next week, we want you to check in over at our YouTube channels now, Philadelphian Church and BroSal.org. And leave us some comments. Start a string. Start a thread. Let's get some people interested in what's going on here. And let us know that you're listening and that you're starting to get it, because history's proven it to you. So until we see you again next